Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and kick things off. All right. Good afternoon. I'm Josh Sun, along with John Law, and we are with the Department of Planning and Development. Welcome to the February 8th, 2023 meeting of the Committee on Design. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to DPD's YouTube page. To our esteemed committee, thank you for volunteering your time to be a part of this advisory group. To the members of the public who are joining us, what you will see today and at future Committee on Design meetings are projects currently under review by DPD staff. The committee is a voluntary advisory body of design professionals that provide their expertise on design issues. This committee is not a substitute for Plan Commission, as it is not a forum for public debate, nor is the advice of the committee legally binding. It is the hope that today's discourse will lead to recommendations that will elevate the design excellence of the city of Chicago. These recommendations will be forwarded to DPD staff for consideration as they review these projects for Plan Commission and subsequent approvals. I will now continue on to the roll call. Sorry, another meeting is kicking off while I'm also kicking this meeting off. So please state present or here if you are in attendance. Catherine Baker.
So I'm in the
Here.
Jackie Koo.
Here.
The details.
Andre Brumfeld.
Recuse for this one.
Philip Enquist.
I'm here.
Jeannie Gang.
Present. Here.
Eleanor Gorski.
Here.
Amanda Williams.
It's kind of like what
Casey Jones.
Different colors.
Maria Villalobos.
Present.
And Leon Walker.
Hi, Josh. I'm here, but I may log back into the other link. I think I'm on the public channel.
Sorry, say that again?
I think I'm on the public channel, not on the host channel. Or here we go. Yeah.
Parking spaces
All right.
off the alley.
Before we get to the agenda, to members of the public, you are welcome to begin submitting comments and questions through the Q&A box. Committee members are invited to review this information during and after each presentation and incorporate the comments into the discussion. We will not be reviewing questions or comments from the public individually, but we'll be recording them for use when reviewing the project. We will now move on to the agenda.
Center on the right hand side.
330 North Green Street, located in the near west side community area in the 27th ward. 330 North Green Street is a proposed amendment to Plan Development 1403 with a net site area of 63,010 square feet. Applicant team, you can go ahead and start sharing your screen as I walk through the description of it.
So they are.
The amendment includes a revised design, increased height, and new site plan configuration from the previously approved proposal. The proposal includes a multi-story 503-foot office building containing 683,001 square feet of office space, 207 accessory vehicular parking spaces, 13,650 square feet of retail space, and 2,500 square feet of open space.
This one.
To any committee members who are associated with this project, if you have not yet, please recuse yourself at this time and for the duration of the review for this project. To the presenters, please clearly state your name and your relation to the project prior to speaking. You have 15 to 20 minutes to present your proposal. Committee members, please hold your comments and questions until after the presentation. And with that, please proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me, I think? This is Jim Prendergast from Gensler. I'm joined here with colleagues from both Gensler and Sterling Bay. Thank you all for having us here today. We're pretty excited to share with you the revised application for 330 North Green.
Are you sharing your screen because we don't see anything?
Nope, should be. Let me see here. Let me try again. I thought it was. That's what I should ask. Share screen. Share. How about now? Is that sharing now?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Josh. So again, thank you for having us here today to talk about the reapplication of 330 North Green Street, a previously approved but now a modified PD application. Go down. You might see, here we are. So the overall design narrative of the project is based around three large ideas: providing a vibrant public realm for the overall project. We will see that in more details as we go through it, but trying to provide an environment that enhances the Fulton Market experience. Maximizing light and air around the building. Our building shape is narrower and thinner, so we want to make sure that we position the building in such a way that we don't crowd Green Street and avoid a canyon effect as a northern end of Green Street as an experience within Fulton Market. And what's driving a lot of our thinking in many ways is an efficient tenant-driven tower floor plan that is informed the shape of the building and its location on the podium and its overall orientation to the site. All of our work has been informed by the neighborhood design guidelines, the West Loop design guidelines, and the Fulton Market Innovation District Plan. We'll hope to show you how these the scheme as we've modified it today respects those criteria as we go forward. Oops, sorry. So let's talk about where the site is. 330 North Green is directly opposite from 333 North Green. It anchors the northern end of Green Street along the northeast corner of Fulton Market. It is bordered on the north end by railroad tracks, Wayman Street to the south, Green to the east, and Peoria to the west. Here is our PD application. You see it actually, the original PD application was two sites across this large rectangular or trapezoidal black line. And here again, you can see that kind of annotation in this diagram. The combination of uses around the spaces include restaurant, office, and residential spaces on different parcels around the area. Again, no kidding ourselves within the ambitious plans for the balance of Fulton Market. These are a lot of the plans that have been proposed throughout the entire neighborhood, but probably to see it best is to look at it three-dimensionally. Those spaces in kind of the orange are spaces that are completed or under construction. Those in the light yellow are those that are future developments that have been proposed and or under review by DPD. But the key for us is that how our building relates to our neighborhood. We have 333 Green and 360, and we see as we go through this explanation the idea of how we're creating this kind of urban room, if you will, at the north end of Green Street. If you're looking, then this is looking northeast. You can see the west facade of the building, 800 West Fulton, 333 Green, or 330 building, and 360 under construction as we speak right now. Site orientation quickly, we're in parcels 1, 3, and 2, this larger kind of trapezoidal shape. We're right across the train tracks on our northern border. Right now the space is leveled and open and ready for construction. And then looking east on this bottom image, you see like looking across to 333 Green with this parking podium and office space above. We're proposing a 32-story office building in the parcel that was previously a PD application that was basically a fairly straightforward extrusion of the floor plate geometry. The original building target tenant was tech tenants. And that following that idea, the building floor plates were long, horizontal with high ceilings, but basically a large lot line to lot line kind of configuration of the whole entire project. Well, since that application was approved, the marketplace has shifted. And what Sterling Bay has discovered is that there's more of an appetite, particularly this part of the neighborhood, for professional service firm and financial service firm tenants. They, as a type, do not require these long horizontal floor plates. That's not really consistent with the way they're organized as businesses. So similar fashions, we organized 360 North Green, and you see in the background there, this under construction is that with Boston Consulting Group as our anchor tenant. The building is a thinner and more narrow form, and one that we think is more consistent with the guidelines put forward for this part of the city. So again, comparing and contrasting the original approved PD, again, you see it's kind of large floor plates at the base of the building. What we're not doing here is we're not changing the already previously approved service access points of the site. Our ramp for our parking and our loading bays are still tucked into the kind of dead end condition of the north end of Peoria. Peoria does not cross the tracks at this point. So we still have that condition in our current scheme. But in this scheme, what we've done is we've placed our office tower to the west, and that's a pretty important component, we think. What that does do is it creates a very long, over 120-foot long walkway to get into the actual building. So our scheme proposes the idea of a light court that helps give us a kind of an urban space consistent with a lot of the experiences you see around Fulton Market. You see the covered area listed here, a setback additionally from the property line, then our open air light court above, leading into one of two entrances to the building. And I'll go through that in a little more detail in a moment. But Green Street is our primary address, our naming address, and Wayman is our drop-off pickup for Ubers and other types of transit to keep drop-offs off of the crowded sensibilities of Green Street. So comparing and contrasting the two office schemes, that's a typology, a square full lot line kind of robust floor plate construction. And then our more slender tower setback. This is both of these are the Wayman Street alpha side. Setting the building back within a 2-floor parking podium within retail and amenity spaces on the first floor and an entranceway off of Wayman. But you see how the building is set back. And it features terraces, outdoor spaces on each office floor, as well as amenity spaces for low-rise and high-rise tenants. Comparing and contrasting the two schemes, these are slightly different perspectives, but the view on the left is looking northwest, staying with Green Street, the foreground, and Wayman. And here we are actually at the railroad tracks, but so we have our Green Street, and you can see how we've pushed the office tower extremely as far back as we can on the site to make the pedestrian experience happen in such that you may not even wear the office buildings there as you're walking on that edge of the site. From a sustainability perspective, where our baseline is a silver LEED component to the space. However, engaging our new energy code and understanding the ambitions of the public about the initiatives of a more sustainable future. Now we're in early days now in the design. We're only a concept, but the project will be incorporating principles of passive design, advanced high performance systems, improved occupant experience conditions. We're looking to reduce operational carbon through facade systems, passive and active design strategies, energy efficient systems, all electric heating. Project will incorporate high quality spaces to promote tenant satisfaction, improve productivity. We'll incorporate design elements from indoor air quality, biophilic design, and sustainable product selections throughout the specification of the details of the project. And we will be incorporating bird-friendly design strategies, which include from a range of things, including implementing collision mitigation elements, bird-friendly year-round interior and exterior lighting controls and lamps. No internal greenery will be visible from the outside of the building, and exterior grates will not have openings greater than 3/4 of an inch. These are part of the palette that we're working with as we continue to evolve the design, but we're aware of the criteria and the interest in these issues, and we're looking forward to investigating them further as we go forward with the design. Okay, page 7. Come on, here we go. So the program brief was about this different type of use for the space. So we started to look at the idea of designing the building from the seat to the street. How do we envision how people will use the building and how that might inform the building's architecture? So we started looking at first the idea of what we had before, which is kind of the edge to edge kind of form massing of the building. And then we started to look at a point tower, looking at the shape of the building, but making it smaller, moving it around the podium in different ways. But we found there was, it didn't really address the issues of how the tenants will use the space. This point tower concept does not work really well for professional service firms and financial service firm clients. I'll explain that in a moment. So we ended up looking then at this kind of shifted tower plate configuration. And then we experimented with different ways of organizing that on the site. But the first thing is to think about how a professional service firm works and a financial service firm. The priority is for perimeter window usage. And actually their business models have evolved to a point where they don't need a lot of interior storage space. A lot of deep, dark interior space that a rectangle would provide, we don't need. So the concept is to basically don't build what we don't need. So the concept of the building is 2 office blocks, full floor to ceiling glaze for natural daylight penetration and community of spaces inside the space. Basically, they're hung essentially on a structural core. It's a very simple concept. We then looked at the idea, well, if we have that as our typology, how do we move it around the site? Are there any advantages to looking at diagonal orientations, pushing things closer to Wayman, to more across the railroad tracks to the north, bring it closer to be adjacent to Green Street? And as an urban gesture, we felt it was best to move it, as we've shown you, all the way to the west, giving views to our friends in 360 North Green to still see down across into Green Street. Of course, our building in Wayman is on the northern edge of the historic district, so we have clear, unrestricted views for blocks looking at the south. And we really thought that that was the most urban friendly and neighbor friendly configuration for the building. So this gave us our partie. 2 office blocks, clean column-free interiors, 45-foot spans, and also the idea of amenity terraces for tenants on both ends of the building that are tucked into the interior notches between the 2 plates to help cut down on wind exposure, but also make them more intimate in space, and also helps with leasing of the spaces too. So then each tenant on the east or west side of the building can each have their own terrace. But this goes back to this kind of wellness configuration about having the ability to get outdoors on your floor without having to leave your floor to go to a common amenity floor. Again, the building is pushed back to the west. We have this notion of creating an urban room, a lot of air and light around it, the office tower itself, and being a respectful player with its neighboring buildings. The Wayman entrance we thought was kind of important because it touches a little bit about the Fulton Market connection and the way we organize the building. cladding the podium all in kind of a dark gray brick, echoing the kind of industrial palette of the overall Fulton Market experience, but also creating this kind of discovering spaces of the second entrance, et cetera, retail on the street level, and connecting to the Wayman kind of experience going up to Wallstead and our friends at 800 West Fulton as well. The light court is a unique solution for us. So how do we manage this deep walking space from green to the office front door? And we love this idea of actually having the space give you a surprise. So consistent with a lot of the elements you see in the Fulton Market experience, this journey of discovery, as you walk through the building or you start to experience the project, you learn more and they become unique special spaces. This gives outdoor dining environments for our F&B options, but also creates a special event space, something that's very physically open to the public, easy to get to, and we'll talk a little bit more on that in a moment.
Hey, Jim, you have about
Sure.
5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll speed up. So then we have this view of looking down from above. You can see how the light court connects to the overall building form all the way down to grade. We're excited about the idea that our parking block is the same size as that 360. It's about the same size as the Punch Bowl building. So the entire west facade is no more than a 3-story expression, the entire 3-block stretch of Green Street. Skip on this because we've talked a lot about this. I've talked a little bit about the access points around the building. Parking block, amenity space sitting on top of the parking, the office floors, the elevations, which I think you've seen. This deck was circulated in advance, so I'm sure you've seen these. Staggering the blocks gives us kind of unique configurations for way different parts of the building can still have light to the interior. And then our final shot here is we're doing a mid-level mechanical design, so we're able to create a 2-story space that sits on top of our main low-rise tenant environment to give us a beautiful 3-story dedicated space for a tenant there, which changes the shape of the building. It isn't just a continuous block of glass going up and down. There's a separation to the bifurcation to the massing as we go forward. So with that, I'll pause. Josh, I think we made our time, and we'll open the floor for questions and conversation.
Thanks, Jim. So committee members, the floor is now yours for comments and questions to the applicant team. Please raise your Zoom hand and we will call on you. Let me just pull you all up first. Thanks. Yes, so Leon, would you like to start?
All right, Jim, thank you for this really thorough and inspired sort of presentation. I think you hit the points of where the office is going spot on in terms of the new emerging tenant mix and the amenities and the floor plates and the design implications. The question I think that's really front and center for this committee, and I think you've had some discussions around this, is this, you describe it as a surprise when we enter into the light.
A moment of delight, yes.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting description, and maybe one that some may see as a little optimistic. So can you just give us a little bit more on this, because it seems to me that the bridge concept has been previously reviewed, and it just seems to give on other projects. I'm saying, how does that help this this area?
Okay.
Because it doesn't appear readily to be an ad that helps this area become more pedestrian friendly, more enjoyable, more light.
Sure.
And so if you could speak to that a little bit, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Let me try and change something here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Where we go? Oops. And I'm going to let me ask, can you see my screen now? Do you see a different visual?
Yes, we see like a
Yeah.
streetscape.
Yep, there you go. So we actually created a few panoramas we wanted to walk through to show you the scheme as proposed. And then this addresses, I think, a little bit of your concern or the topic at hand. So the opening to the bridge, as you described it here, which crosses our 2 floors of our parking podium above. There are a couple elements we think make it something that's worth discovering, and one would be discovered. Part of it is that it's a 22-foot high by 60-foot wide aperture coming into the space. It's very generous. And we think it plays very well on the street, and it's something you can clearly see your destination from approaching the space. If you're looking again a little close sooner in, this is standing underneath that bridge. which is just basically the width of a drive aisle and a parking space. So it's roughly 30 feet. But as we stand at this opening, we think that this kind of proportion is very, very hospitable for people to come in across the space. We've got the restaurant space across the street on Green, and that your vista standing in the space, standing even underneath this, if you even are in just a few feet, you immediately see the light court. It's just really, really prevalent. It's not a great travel distance, and it really makes the 30 feet versus 60 feet. So essentially, we're talking about 120 feet. So about 100, just over 100 feet. This proportion is basically a third of the space is the overhang, and then twice that distance and depth is the actual light court itself. If we go in a little further, when we're in the light court, so looking back at that bridge space, we believe that with a F&B located on the corners, on the street level at Green and Wayman and Green again, these will be their open areas for their front face, if you will, for covered dining, which should be extremely animated and very busy and be a real interest for folks to come in. Then again, once coming in further, you're in this kind of beautiful kind of the light well, the light court, as we call it, kind of space that really gives this special kind of meaning to, I'm in this unique space that's part of Fulton Market. I can still see the city, I can see part of the city, but I'm in a discrete and intimate environment that's unique to this building. And we feel that there's actually, as you know, precedent at Green Street Meets and other places where there are spaces, or even 167 Green, where you're going through the space, you have a muse. Our spaces, this is actually taller and wider than those spaces, almost by a factor of 2. So we really think we've gone to some lengths to make sure this space is amplified in its ability to be connected to the street, and for those who are using it to feel welcome. Does that address some of your question?
Yes, it definitely gives more. And I think I'll let other committee members join in, but yes.
I think, Jeannie, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I was gonna compliment well, it's market driven, but I do like the new massing better. Because it feels more in keeping with the district, with the low kind of, and then the narrower tall building as opposed to the blocky building. So I think it's really nice and brings in a lot of daylight and things like that. So I think that part of the upper volume is really well situated and appropriate. And then it's really just about how public, I guess, the space is. It is nice to enter in there, and I was just wondering if because of our climate, that is good. It activates it in the winter, but so just maybe a little bit more about the ideas about what kind of retail spaces, will everyone feel welcome to walk in there?
Sure.
Kind of the same lines of the last comments, and I do feel like it is a good quality space to have in the city like that. And so that's one point, like, how do people feel welcome coming in? And the second question is, when you increase the setback along the east side for the sidewalk, how did you decide to do it on that side versus, let's say, the south side, or what was the criteria for that?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Let me go. So let me first address the comment here. Well, one of the things that Sterling Bay brought to us was this notion of how do businesses survive in pandemics or crises? We all saw how dining establishments really struggled with able to bring, especially in winter months and cold weather, to bring people in and to keep the street life alive and keep those businesses vital. And one of the things we liked about this condition was we had the ability to provide a little bit of both. So God forbid we end up with another health crisis at some point, which I think is wise to think that we might have at some point. It still gave us a bit of a redundancy, if you will, to have the ability for a tenant to still be able to provide and reach their clients and have a comfortable space to still have environments to eat in. And because our primary sense is the retail functions would probably be F&B. And the notion here that, and just can imagine this in a winter when there's the snow coming in, that the magic of being in this space, when the snow drifting down on you while you're sitting in this kind of beautiful little exterior room. So we found it to be a very unique offering and charming. One that actually could accelerate the attention that this might have with the tenant because it's giving basically two frontages, the street on Wayman and Green, but also a new quote frontage in the courtyard. So it gives them an awful lot of access to a visual connection as guests walk past to see and learn more about the restaurant, get a sense of the vibe of what's going on inside the space, but also have a little forecourt of that experience on the inside, inside our courtyard. To address your point about the setback, let me go to that page. Was here. So we looked at the setback because there were some concerns about congestion along Green Street, even as a pedestrian. You know, there's a little bit of a pinch here at the Punch Bowl folks, and we felt that giving some relief on this end, because it is still going to be the business address, will still be 330 North Green. And we still want to certainly encourage for that foot traffic for retail, but also access directly into our access to see the elevator lobbies as one enters the commercial space. That seemed to be the most important kind of area to give some relief. It gave us a reason to also push back the entrance point along Wayman for a similar reason, to give people pause, the ability to stand out of the weather and be able to get out of a cab and get into the space very quickly, but realizing that we're going to have walk-by traffic here. We have train crossings here. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't cramping or perception of being cramped in as you walked along the north extension of Green Street on this side. Does that answer your question, Janie? Or at least address it?
Hang on, yes, I think that addresses it, but in a way, it's like the question of where to push back is really an interesting one, I think, because on the one hand, you're giving more space on the east, but there is the train tracks and everything, and just wondering about the corner and the south side of the building, you know, where it's more pleasant to be outside, maybe. Like,
Interesting point.
I was thinking like that the south edge.
This edge here.
It's hard to say without the full context, but I think there's I like that the street is widened there. I'm curious about whether the if you studied the amount, you know, the foot traffic and such, because there is that train tracks there, so it's hard to imagine that the east side is that busy. And just wondering if the south side isn't a better place to offer it, or maybe the corner. Those are the questions.
Sure.
Mine going on right now, but
That's okay. One of the things that, again, it's kind of the idea of seat to street is kind of had certainly a point to play in here, that locating our office plates as efficiently as we can to the west end, which is also the widest part of the site, which makes sense, right? And our center core building was then it kind of implies a certain access coming into the core, into the building. So that's one thing. Our parking grid also has placed all these things interlace, right? So that impacted a little bit of it. We're also thinking about, and this is a lesson we've learned from our 360 Green experience, was the optimum, what the market wants for a real prime retail restaurant space. And frankly, our 360 Green space is proving to be a little tight. So in laying out this space, we wanted to give us a little more wiggle room. And so we thought, well, if we had to choose a site to pull back from, we thought Green Street might be the better part of Valor to pull back from there. But because also from our parking plan, not to get too detailed on it, but when we look at our parking plan widths, you know, to get our ramp in here and efficiently lay out our parking numbers, we kind of end up being on that southern edge. If we were to move that in, we could study it, but I think that's something that would kind of pinch the efficiency here. We're right on the edge of being under, or right at the edge of being parked for the occupancy demands of the building from a tenant point of view. So we're really anxious about reducing any parking spots in here, because we're probably going to be under what we're allowed to have by PD for the previous PD, making sure we've got MOPD requirements accommodated, et cetera, and getting this the most efficient plan here to also to keep our parking block as low as possible. So as you can appreciate, all those elements kind of interlace with one another as you start to lay out the building in more detail. But I think it's interesting comment about the south side.
got it.
Maria, I see you next.
Thank you, Josh. And if you get that, this slide's great. Well, I also appreciate the revised tower design. It brings a different kind of sensibility to the scale. I will probably try to address the ground floor. And Jim, understood these are ideas for you to consider, and you might and you have to negotiate all kinds of reasons and priorities and
Of course.
points
course.
of view. However, looking at this floor plan, immediately, when I think of design excellence and how to create a better city at the pedestrian level, I think it's not a complicated kind of idea to consolidate the retail on the north side and open up the corner to
Mhm.
really create a public space open to the sky, inviting to pedestrians in close proximity to the food market. I would also be interested to see the same kind of energy on greenery and that is in the rooftop, but actually on the ground where the feet of the public occupy spaces. And
Mhm, mhm.
as you move forward in the design iterations, how can the public ground, bring that kind of imagination and landscape design intention that is being considered for rooftop.
Mhm.
I think opening up the corner will create not only a better project, but a better city. And there are many ways in which one could do that. And there are different proportions and considerations and materialities and circulations that you can look into. But I think that would be a step worth taking.
Okay, it's interesting. We've had that, we've understood that kind of sensibility in some of the conversations with DPD. And I think that one of the things that, and you just hinted at in your intro to your commentary, was that we've got this interlacing of vertical functions that we have to try and mesh together, right? So the corner, let me just stress the notion of the corner. The corner space, the qualities of the space you described are fairly self-evident, right? I mean, that big open space there on the south side of a southeast corner you can clearly see that impact. Our concern is that it really causes an awful lot of complications to how we're organizing the support functions of the building. Now, that's for us to wrestle to the ground, right? And the light court was something we think is actually quite interesting, but also if we push retail to where the white space is, or basically flip this yellow space to where the white is, right? We lose this kind of very dynamic corner of retail for the edges of the space. And the other thing we like about the way the podium meets the ground is that it's consistent with the West Loop city design guidelines, where we want to maintain the edges of the site for kind of a clean kind of urban edge condition as we walk around the building, around the city. We recognize that as developments evolve, that DPD and the committee have looked at trying to include more green space at the grade level, and especially if it has an opportunity to be south facing. So we appreciate that. And it is something we heard DPD talk about, and we studied some other ideas that were put forward by them as well that we think could work in some respects. But the open corner in the southeast is complicates two key drivers for the success of the project. But I understand your concerns, and let us give it some thought.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate also your
No problem.
Transparency, disclosing the consequences of making the changes. And I think it's that constant trade-off of city making, right? While there might be some compromises to be made in regard to what will be better for retail, there are also enormous gains on what will be better for public space. And
Understood. Thank you, Marie.
Hey, Jackie, I think you're next.
Yeah, hi, Jim. How are you?
Jackie, how are you?
Good. I also agree that the tower at being more slender is a lot better. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves from a facade standpoint, because at this point it seems pretty kind of consistent all the way around.
Sure.
But with the new energy code, I think some differentiation would improve the tower quite a bit, and also increase its energy performance. So I think that would be great to see a little bit, more visual interest with the glass tower.
Mhm.
Also, I'm wondering if there's any way to introduce a portion of that tower hitting the ground in some way instead of making it such a differentiated podium and tower concept. And I do agree with the others who would like to investigate something on the corner, or maybe even eliminating the bridge. That's a little bit, to me,
On
somewhat
Green
of a
Street? On Green Street?
yeah,
Yeah.
into the courtyard. That's somewhat of to me, like a barrier to being able to participate as a public space.
Mhm,
Because when I see a space like that, I have, a feeling that it's not really public,
mhm. No,
I guess.
we
And
appreciate
your
that.
intention, I know, is to have it be public.
Absolutely,
And I
absolutely.
think that bridge across creates this kind of formidable portal that I cannot go into.
Yeah, sure. Let me touch base on two of those items. So one of the things we've done, one of the things that we've done in the building, and I actually show that in the elevation, might be best to start there, is we have the building structure, of course, comes all the way straight through. We've recessed the base of the building to give a little relief in the building as it reaches out into our kind of podium park for the which is where all the tenant amenities are. We've had some success with Sterling Bay and with us and with other design firms, as this is kind of a way of providing some covered area for our guests as they step out of the office before they go outside, so they don't have to be outside to not get their head wet. So this is kind of a help there, and plus we don't need the program to go all the way that far out to the window line. So that creates this kind of indentation, which we kind of like the idea of it not necessarily having to have this collision of the two, because they don't necessarily touch all the time. They're not always in the same plane, but they are in the same plane here on Wayman. This whole facade here is all, except for that setback and this setback, this plane of the tower, this plane of the tower, and this plane of that pedestrian or that vehicular bridge are all in the same plane. And we had an image that Katie made me take out of looking up at that image, and you can see these things all the same plane. So visually, we want to do exactly what you described, to bring the edge of the building down to the street, so that this edge and this edge are all in the same plane. So if you were to stand here, look up, this is all coming down to you right down to the street level. Well, not physically coming down, we thought we were able to keep the planar condition in alignment to bring that impression as you hit the street. Whether that works enough to address your concern, I can't say, but that's one thing that's always tried to address it. Your other comment was about the setback or the condition of the bridge. So the bridge right now on this might be a good time to bring up one of the ideas that we know we've heard from DPD and team is right now there's as you remember from the plan, there's a parking here and a drive aisle behind it. There was an idea that we did model up one of the schemes that started to look at the idea of how do we make, because we looked at the idea of eliminating the bridge, and it really becomes a handicap in our parking components. As I mentioned, we're already pretty tight to what the marketplace is going to expect for a building of this scale for parking, and we lose 12 spots. 12 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're already at the precipice, it's material to us. So what we looked at is the possibility of moving the bridge back and keeping the parking spaces. It does adjust the proportion of the light well, of the light court, but it does diminish, and actually you could even say announce more clearly the effect of the entrance of the interior space. So here is our existing condition we're proposing, and here's a condition that we feel that if we needed to study further, we could probably work through, but instead of being a 60 by 60 square, now it's a 60 by 40 square. And we're basically pushing this drive aisle in, and just kind of flipping the components of where we would basically take this area, make this where the parking is, keep the drive aisle where it was, and sacrifice or flip these six spots to the interior. And what we get is then this kind of condition where you see a really marked difference in the way the facade works along Green Street, which you think also, one could argue, breaks up the scale of the Green Street facade. These are kind of obtuse views again, but it also diminishes the scale, which we think is something we probably need to study further, of the actual light court itself. And if you could bear with me, I can take you to something else. And there's one other thing we probably could show you. Let me make sure I've got it lined up here. What is here. Okay, sorry, I'm just flipping around. Give me a moment. Too many windows open. So we showed you this before. This is the current design. If we push the bridge back, this is again those same kind of landscape panorama models. And then if we stand out across the street, we just, of course, the distance from there, from the street view to the entrance of the facade of the building is the same. Here we are inside, underneath the bridge, but the bridge then has more air, if you will, at the street frontage. And as we look up, you could argue perhaps a bit more welcoming. We indent the public zone totally, open to the sky above. And then as we walk into the space, that space becomes perhaps still that kind of found jewel that becomes, we're looking back then at Green Street, the same distance, the same 30 plus feet of that bridge, but now the light court is smaller. And Jeannie, to your point about what kind of light will we get in, the smaller it gets, of course, the light angles or how much time this facade of the north facade is going to get southern light shrinks. But we've talked about the idea of vegetation on this side of the plan to really make this kind of a living space there, so it really pops and embraces the notion of its southern exposure. And it takes a different proportion to it, being, as I say, just a 40 by 40 square, looking up to the sky. But we like this idea as perhaps a compromise of showing how these two elements work together. And the other thing it does is then makes the entrance off of Green Street with the indentation identical to the indentation, the condition off of Wayman, where we have the indentation. So if I go back to the PowerPoint, you can see it here. This indentation is the same. So it brings a scale of not being full block long facades into play, into the overall composition. And it gives us the ability to articulate the entrance on Green Street. We hope that entices the idea of the invite of the urban extending our hand and welcoming our public to the space, and still having this, generous 60-foot wide, 22-ish foot high space. And the underside of the ceiling, we should also say, is a placeholder. We don't know whether we might end exposing more of the structure or making this a lighter surface, something more rugged or gritty, so that isn't so maybe corporate looking, to make it really feel more as if it's a bridge and celebrate this motion idea of moving from one block of space to another. Now, one thing we did want to show you as well, if we have time it permits, we have created a series of marketing videos for the building, and what we'd like to do is, maybe if I can get this to play on your screen. Let me move this thing over. Give me a moment here. It's not playing. Oh, there, you can see it now. Can you see the animation?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is, let me pause it for a moment. This is our current scheme, and we're traversing north on Green Street. We're approaching Wayman, and we pause here. You can see the indentation already on Wayman, the tower above, 360 Green beyond. And as we keep going here, we can see as we drive by the building, and for marketing purposes, we panned up at the building. Another view that's interesting is to stand across the street and walk in. So here we are on Green Street, walking west into, and I think you see, this is as you mentioned, Jackie, a portal, but it's substantial. It's a 3-to-1 proportion, 3 times wide as it is tall, 60 by 22, essentially. So as we continue to come in, you can see, Gene, to your point, the amount of light penetration coming in. So we think the south facade could be really something for public art. And as we come into the space, the structure of the tower comes down to the ground and in between the other blocks of the buildings. So we get this really kind of heroic, kind of unique experience. And the last view here I'm going to show you is actually from inside the building itself, from the lobby. There's that Wayman entrance beyond, straight ahead is that Wayman setback. And then as we continue to pan in across, we look back into the light court, and that's the current size. And you can see it's a pretty comfortable scale. Again, it being 60 by 60, and that's that bridge element across. And you can see all the way through then to the Green Street facade as we go across there. Let me go back to that. We want to share those ideas for the committee. We're listening. We hear what you're suggesting. We're considering all of those elements and still trying to weave them into the lattice of functional crossover and complexity of a tall building, but still trying to embrace or address some of these notions that come across the ideas of an urban fabric condition that you're trying to see magnified in the design. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions or comments on those ideas.
Thanks,
I-
Jim.
I-
Oh,
Thank
go
you. I
ahead.
think it's an improvement. But one other question that people from the public are wondering is the parking count a requirement by the PD, or is it something that you guys feel is
I believe, so
marketable?
the original PD had a combined number of parking spaces for both parcels. So the amount of parking available to us by the current PD, and again, we're not amending the fundamentals of the PD, just the design that sits within it, is, I think, and the rest of the team can correct me, I think we have available to us about 207 available spaces. Constraints of the design that we're trying to impose to keep our podium down to 2 floors, the light well that we think is, unlike what we think is important, and the ramping, we're only actually achieving 190. So we're not actually even achieving what by PD limit we're allowed to. We're going a little less. So that's why I said earlier, that we're right at the line of being viable. And when we're talking to tenants about how much parking they would like to see for their executives or for their staff or what have you, the Sterling Bay leasing team is telling us we're right about at the Rubicon. We're right about that line.
Okay.
Does that answer your
Thanks.
question, Jackie? Give you some
Yeah.
context to how we got that number?
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Okay. Yeah, we're at 95 spots a floor, something like that.
I think, Phil, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for this presentation. I think it was really well done. I very much liked your original principles of this vibrant public realm. And clearly you're trying to get there with all the effort your design team is doing to look at this sort of ground floor, maximizing light and air, and this idea of rethinking the punch bowl, as you called it, into a thinner, more slender tower. This all seems to be in the right direction. I have to say, I very much appreciated your summary of your energy aspirations and going beyond silver lead to respond to this new energy code. And I think as you do that, as you describe your passive design and your efforts to reduce carbon, your material choices, your ideas about a bird-friendly building, I just encourage you to keep articulating that part of the story, because as the design committee, we have been encouraging this with so many design teams. And I just appreciate the fact that you offered that without us having to ask. And I think Jackie's comment about how is the facade of this new massing, especially with this broad west-facing facade, how is the facade responding to specific site orientation? I think that would be of great interest to us, how you're reducing heat gain by this large glass west facade.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, why don't we, my last question just goes back down to the ground plane with everybody else.
Okay.
I don't think you really have to go into that, but I would just encourage as you continue to refine the design, that you've got an energy story here that's really innovative and is inspiring the next generation of Fulton Market buildings.
Well, thank you. I mean, we certainly see this building as being part of that conversation about what is the future of Fulton Market. You know, this is not another, kind of steel and glass or factory redo kind of aesthetic, right? We're looking at a very forward-thinking kind of building, and that's what the tenants who are looking to come into this market now are looking for. I will say that the team has done a lot of great work on absorbing the nuances of the new energy code. We're looking at window aperture proportions very carefully. We're looking to try and use as much passive kind of potential as we can. And we're doing a lot of aggressive energy modeling, but again, it's still early days, but we understand your comments, and in many ways we're trying to get there as well. So we appreciate it.
Great. And then if I could just add on to everybody else's comments about the street level and ground plane, I I do understand the emphasis of Green Street. I am walking Green Street more and more every day as I teach at UIC, and Green Street has become this kind of great street to walk down all the way.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
all the way.
fantastic.
It is amazing. And I just wonder about is that atrium space big enough? Does it really get the vibrant public realm you're looking at and maximizing light and air? And I just wondered if the 12 spots, the 12 parking spaces are worth it. I mean, if you could bite the bullet and eliminate those 12 parking spaces, you could eliminate that bridge. And if you eliminated that bridge, your courtyard would be so much better. And, how critical really is it to maintain those 12 parking spaces versus getting a much more successful public open space? So maybe that's a question for you and your design and development team. But that single loaded bridge over that courtyard, whether it's recessed back or not, I just wonder if that's really worth it. You've got circulation through the garage without having to have the bridge. I just wondered if you could live without it, and I think the project would be a home run.
We did, that was one of the considerations that DPD had also kind of shared with us as well. I think as a team, we looked at it and we're a little concerned about the cul-de-sac nature of getting in and around the parking garage. And as I mentioned before, those 12 spots are kind of, as I said, we're really on the razor's edge here, I think, but your points are well taken. And I think the team will certainly, take it into consideration.
But I mean, what we're seeing in so many other cities is, first of all, designing parking garages above grade to be retrofitted into occupied space.
Yep.
And as autonomous technology takes off and continues, the need for all-day parking is going to reduce. So I just would love to encourage you to challenge yourselves on 12 parking spaces.
We hear you. Got it.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Leon, yes, comments.
Just one quick question on the follow-up on that for Jim. Is it, even with the bridge recessed, is it an idea that the bridge is translucent? I just wanted.
It would be
solid, opaque, or is it translucent?
I think we're still studying that, but our sense is that it could be opaque or it could be frosted. It would not be clear.
Okay.
No, we're rendering it as frosted or somewhat obscured. Again, we're still early days here, but we're thinking about the idea of this would have to be kind of a truss to come across here, this 60-foot span, and the idea of celebrating that somehow. So we just see the ghost of the structure behind it. And again, if we have parking here, we have our crash wall in front of this, so it would certainly not be clear and frosted in some respects. These panels are opaque here on the facade; they are not clear. But it gives us, we like the way it breaks up the rhythm of the long facade and gives it some animation, which we thought was kind of a positive development in the overall scheme design.
Well, I think Phil certainly articulated a pretty compelling argument for additional study of it, but if there's something to do there, maybe there's something to do there that could celebrate that entrance a little bit more.
I'm sorry, would that mean the way the bridge, that piece? Yeah. Its articulation and how it receives, I see. Very good. Yeah. So, these are early days, but yes, absolutely. That is
art, public art. I mean, something that would give something.
Well, interesting. We talked about, okay, good point.
To that point, I will say that from the public, they had mentioned, can the architects please make sure the brick on the base is beautifully articulated? Currently, the flow comes off as flat and lacks a true cornice line. So you just add that. Are there any other comments from the committee?
We're getting a lot of comments in right now from people that are comparing parking numbers with other comparable projects, then they seem to be much less. I don't need to go through all the comments, but I just, again, it just sort of reiterates the challenge to the development team to see if they really need all this parking.
Can't see the chat box, so I don't know. Yes, okay.
Can someone from the city team comment on that? The parking that's needed?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the underlying zoning for the approved PDA was at DX7. So for office space, there's no minimum requirement. But since it's an approved PD, it was approved with a certain amount of parking spaces, they would have to amend it to reduce any parking that's required. So technically they could do it. And we could do it through this review process. Does that make sense?
They could reduce the parking through this amendment process?
Correct.
is what
Yes,
you're
that's
saying?
correct.
Okay.
I'm glad Eleanor asked that the city can comment on this. Are there any other tools or bonuses that could be applied if the development team reduced their parking?
They've already taken a floor area bonus and they've paid into that. It is a transit surf location, so they could reduce the parking further. That's basically what's available to them.
I see.
And I will say that the public benefit is also like, I understood parking numbers are related to the decision-making process. But as a positive in the amendment process, open to the sky, covered by planting, accessible public spaces, that benefit the everyday citizen. If what it takes is to reduce parking, that's one thing, but the ultimate public benefit, I think, is the most important criteria.
So it sounds to me like removing the bridge and the parking spaces there and figuring out how to make the circulation work in those parking areas may be a nice compromise. Because we did hear from the development team that they need the amount of parking to accommodate the potential tenants in this.
Mhm.
But I think you've heard from the city and this design committee that we would like to see this bridge removed and for the courtyard to be more open. So perhaps that's the compromise that can be reached between the public realm and what the developer needs to make this work.
I will
Just a
continue
suggestion.
to argue that the better location for the public space is in the full of life south corner, closer to the market.
All right. We are about 2 minutes over, so I want to respect everyone's time. If there are no other comments, we'll go ahead and close the meeting. So before we adjourn, on behalf of DPD, thank you again for all of your critical thinking and thoughtful comments on this important project. The meeting will now come to a close. So thank you for attending and sharing your thoughts, and we hope you will come back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.